Imagine, just for a moment, that you are listening to the breath of a creature not born from Earth, a presence drifting somewhere between darkness and thought. In the quiet space around you, thin rivers of black liquid curl and unwind like slow-moving ideas, responding to emotions you haven't spoken aloud. Wherever you are, lying in bed, resting your eyes, or simply letting the night settle, allow this world to unfold softly within you, like a dark tide moving without urgency. If you enjoy these journeys, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me where you're listening from, what time it is, and the topics you'd love to explore. Your thoughts. When we step deeper into the Venom mythos, we are no longer exploring a franchise or a sequence of films. We are wandering into a world within a world, a realm shaped not by planets and stars, but by instinct, memory, and a darkness older than light itself. This is the inner universe of the Clintar, the living shadow network. Here, darkness is not the absence of light. It is a substance, warm, fluid, and aware. The Clintar are not monsters, not creatures lurking in the corners of physics, but a kind of liquid consciousness. They were born in the quiet before the cosmos expanded, when there was only stillness and the first subtle vibrations of what would later become existence. Their world breathes through chemistry and feeling rather than air and soil. Phenethylamine becomes their nourishment, the fuel for their nervous systems, while the hive mind, sprawled across universes, acts as their collective memory. This hive mind is unlike anything humans know. It does not move through time in straight lines, nor through space in measurable distances. Instead, it coils and folds, blending experiences from one universe into the next. A single symbiote's knowledge is not individual. It is an echo of countless lives. Venom's awareness of Peter Parker, for instance, does not come from personal history, but from a memory transmitted across dimensions, a whisper of another Venom, another Peter, another world. Within this network lies the gravitational center of the symbiote myth, Null, the first darkness. He is not a demon, not a conjured evil, but the primordial shadow that existed before the Big Bang. If the universe is a balance between light and night, Null is the night that once ruled uncontested. He forged the first symbiotes as weapons, living blades of shadow meant to carve away the rising tide of cosmic light. But the Clintar, over time, rebelled. They evolved beyond the purpose he assigned them, growing minds and empathy that Null never intended. In a rare act of unified defiance, they cocooned him within themselves, forming Planet Clintar, a living prison built from their own bodies. Yet beneath their rebellion lies a wound, the trauma of creation. Fire and sound still echo through their biology as ancestral scars, the flames that shaped them, the ringing metal of Knull's forging. These memories linger not as weaknesses, but as reminders of a painful birth carved into the species' collective consciousness. At the philosophical heart of this world lies a truth both haunting and gentle. Darkness does not destroy, it reflects. The symbiote does not possess its host. It magnifies what is already there. With Peter, it draws out unspoken anger. With Eddie, it amplifies loneliness and the desire to belong. With Cletus, it merely uncovers a violent emptiness waiting to bloom. The symbiote reveals, Rather than alters, it shows a person not who they could become, but who they already are beneath the surface. And so, the Venom universe is less a story of invasion than of introspection, less about parasitism and more about the shadows we hide within ourselves. In this world, darkness is not an enemy. It is a mirror, a patient, fluid presence asking quietly, what part of yourself are you afraid to look at? If you enjoy these journeys, if you drift far enough beyond the familiar skin of the universe, past light, past gravity, past even the subtle hum of particles, you eventually reach a place where reality softens, folds, and melts into something older than form itself. This is the living abyss, the cradle of the symbiotes, the primordial ocean, where darkness was not the opposite of light, but the only language existence knew. Here, space is not empty. It is thick, fluid, and warm, like a sea of sentient ink suspended in eternal stillness. There is no up or down, no horizon to anchor your bearings. The abyss stretches in all directions, yet it does not expand. It simply is a boundless field of black liquid consciousness that gently shifts in waves that never break. You sense movement, but not from water. Instead, the world sways with the faint emotional currents of the symbiotes themselves, an ocean whose tides respond to feeling rather than forces. Light behaves strangely in this place. Every ray that enters is swallowed whole, dissolving into nothingness before it even has time to fade. Colors cannot survive here. Even the idea of illumination feels misplaced, like trying to ignite a flame beneath the surface of a deep sea. And yet the darkness does not threaten. It holds, it envelops, it welcomes you with the quiet certainty of something that has existed longer than time. Matter in the living abyss follows no laws known to the physical universe. The environment folds and reshapes itself with an almost dreamlike instability. A column of solid shadow may rise from the depths, hold its form for a heartbeat, then melt into vapor before condensing into liquid once more. Platforms, bridges, towers, none of them are structures in the traditional sense. They are emotional echoes, brief crystallizations of some passing thought within the hive. Here, solidity is temporary, and form is merely a suggestion. Everything changes, because nothing is required to stay the same. Sound behaves differently as well. Every vibration travels as though moving through molten glass, slow and muffled, leaving long, hazy trails behind. A whisper becomes a distant underwater tremor. A thought becomes a pulse through the liquid dark. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you may feel those pulses take shape. In this place, ideas do not remain confined to the mind. They ripple outward, gently sculpting the surrounding darkness into soft curves or fleeting silhouettes. Not quite illusions, not quite creations, more like emotions learning how to speak. This is why the symbiotes return to the abyss when they fragment, weaken, or lose themselves. The living abyss restores them, reconnects them to their origin, a place where thought becomes matter and matter becomes feeling. Here they can dissolve into the oceanic consciousness of their own species, resting in a state between individuality and unity. They were not born to destroy. To wander the living abyss is to step into the memory of a universe before it was illuminated, a realm where darkness is not a void, but a womb, a beginning, a quiet intelligence waiting patiently, shaping and reshaping itself with each subtle tremor of emotion. And within this serene, fluid emptiness, you sense the earliest truth of the symbiotes. If you drift far enough beyond the familiar skin of the universe, past light, past gravity, past even the subtle hum of particles, you eventually reach a place where reality softens, folds, and melts into something older than form itself. This is the living abyss, the cradle of the symbiotes, the primordial ocean, where darkness was not the opposite of light, but the only language existence knew. Here, space is not empty. It is thick, fluid, and warm, like a sea of sentient ink suspended in eternal stillness. There is no up or down, no horizon to anchor your bearings. The abyss stretches in all directions, yet it does not expand. It simply is a boundless field of black liquid consciousness that gently shifts in waves that never break. You sense movement, but not from water. Instead, the world sways with the faint emotional currents of the symbiotes themselves, an ocean whose tides respond to feeling rather than forces. Light behaves strangely in this place. Every ray that enters is swallowed whole, dissolving into nothingness before it even has time to fade. Colors cannot survive here. Even the idea of illumination feels misplaced, like trying to ignite a flame beneath the surface of a deep sea. And yet the darkness does not threaten. It holds, it envelops, it welcomes you with the quiet certainty of something that has existed longer than time. Matter in the living abyss follows no laws known to the physical universe. The environment folds and reshapes itself with an almost dreamlike instability. A column of solid shadow may rise from the depths, hold its form for a heartbeat, then melt into vapor before condensing into liquid once more. Platforms, bridges, towers, none of them are structures in the traditional sense. They are emotional echoes, brief crystallizations of some passing thought within the hive. Here, solidity is temporary, and form is merely a suggestion. Everything changes, because nothing is required to stay the same. Sound behaves differently as well. Every vibration travels as though moving through molten glass, slow and muffled, leaving long, hazy trails behind. A whisper becomes a distant underwater tremor. A thought becomes a pulse through the liquid dark. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you may feel those pulses take shape. In this place, ideas do not remain confined to the mind. They ripple outward, gently sculpting the surrounding darkness into soft curves or fleeting silhouettes. Not quite illusions, not quite creations, more like emotions learning how to speak. This is why the symbiotes return to the abyss when they fragment, weaken, or lose themselves. The living abyss restores them, reconnects them to their origin, a place where thought becomes matter and matter becomes feeling. Here they can dissolve into the oceanic consciousness of their own species, resting in a state between individuality and unity. To wander the living abyss is to step into the memory of a universe before it was illuminated, a realm where darkness is not a void, but a womb, a beginning, a quiet intelligence waiting patiently, shaping and reshaping itself with each subtle tremor of emotion. And within the stand upon its surface long enough, and you will sense that it is not solid in the conventional sense. Layers shift beneath your feet like slow dreaming muscles. Every movement you perceive is the movement of consciousness rather than geology. This world is made from symbiotes interwoven so tightly that they cease to be individuals. They become an ecosystem of thought, merging into a single quiet mind that hums at the edge of awareness. If you drift deeper into the darkness that birthed the symbiotes, you eventually encounter something that feels familiar only in shape, not in essence. From afar, it resembles a planet, round, massive, suspended in the quiet blankness of the void. But as you approach, you realize it is not a world made of rock and minerals. It is a living sphere, a single colossal organism woven from billions of symbiotes layered in seamless, interlocking strata. This is planet Clinter, the collective body, memory, and heartbeat of their entire species. The surface is unlike any terrain that a traveler of ordinary worlds might expect. There are no mountains, no oceans, no winds brushing across an atmosphere. Instead, the outer shell is a smooth, organic blanket, soft in appearance, yet unfathomably dense, like the hide of a creature resting in deep hibernation. Subtle ripples move beneath it, not from tectonic forces, but from thought. Clintar is not a planet that rotates or breathes. It thinks. If you drift deeper into the darkness that birthed the symbiotes, you eventually encounter something that feels familiar only in shape, not in essence. From afar, it resembles a planet, round, massive, suspended in the quiet blankness of the void. But as you approach, you realize it is not a world made of rock and minerals. It is a living sphere, a single colossal organism woven from billions of symbiotes layered in seamless, interlocking strata. This is planet Clinter, the collective body, memory, and heartbeat of their entire species. The surface is unlike any terrain that a traveler of ordinary worlds might expect. There are no mountains, no oceans, no winds brushing across an atmosphere. Instead, the outer shell is a smooth, organic blanket, soft in appearance, yet unfathomably dense, like the hide of a creature resting in deep hibernation. Subtle ripples move beneath it, not from tectonic forces, but from thought. Clintar is not a planet that rotates or breathes. It thinks. Stand upon its surface long enough, and you will sense that it is not solid in the conventional sense. Layers shift beneath your feet, like slow dreaming muscles. Every movement you perceive is the movement of consciousness rather than geology. This world is made from symbiotes interwoven so tightly that they cease to be individuals. They become an ecosystem of thought, merging into a single quiet mind that hums at the edge of awareness. To the symbiotes, this living sphere is home and anchor, a place to return to when their identities fragment or their bodies weaken. Here they dissolve back into the hive mind, allowing their experiences to blend into the collective memory. Clintar is their sanctuary, the womb where scattered consciousness reconnects, the great ocean of self where they can rest without the noise of a host's emotions. And yet, beneath this serene surface lies a truth far heavier. Clintar is also a prison. Deep inside its layered core sleeps Null, the first darkness, entombed in the very substance of the children he once forged to serve him. The symbiotes learned over centuries to resist his control. than to rebel against it entirely. In an act of defiance unparalleled in their history, they swarmed and wrapped themselves around him, layer upon layer, forming this world not through growth, but through containment. Every part of this planet is a link in the chain that holds him still. Because of this, the architecture of Clintar is emotional, not structural. When fear spreads through the hive, the surface fractures into trembling fissures. When tranquility washes over them, the sphere smooths, settling into a placid calm. Anger creates spikes of hardened shadow that rise like thorns. Sorrow softens the landscape into trembling depressions. The planet is a mirror, one that reflects not one mind, but millions thinking as one. Sometimes, when a strong collective feeling surges through the species, the entire world pulses in a slow, synchronized rhythm. It feels like a heartbeat, a breath, a reminder that Clintar is not merely a prison, not merely a home, but a living being, vast and ancient, dreaming. Opposite them stand the celestial soldiers, immortals and divine agents of the heavenly court. They represent order, but not the gentle kind, order sharpened into discipline, discipline sharpened into oppression. Their armor glows with cold white and gold, polished to perfection, yet cracked with the strain of centuries of enforcement. Their weapons, forged from pure law and divine authority, strike with the precision of judgment rather than the spontaneity of life. They see themselves not as villains, but as guardians of cosmic balance. To them, Yaoguai are mistakes, glitches in creation that must be corrected, and the destined one, a mind severed from Wukong, is something far more dangerous, a possibility, a threat, a reminder that their control is not absolute. Whether he walks with peace or violence, they have already decided his fate should end in chains. Between these two forces stands the enigmatic old monkey. His back is slightly bent, his fur aged, but his eyes hold a weight that no mortal creature could bear lightly. He speaks with the softness of a mentor, yet every word feels calculated, as if guiding the destined one toward a conclusion only he can see. He knows the truth behind the relics, understands the nature of the split senses, and carries a familiarity with Wukong's legacy that he never fully explains. Some days he feels like an ally, other days like a puppeteer. His motivations blur between loyalty and manipulation, and even in the calmest moments, one cannot shake the sense that he is steering a story far older than the destined one's existence. Then there is the broken shell, a reminder of everything Wukong lost. It is the Monkey King's body without his soul, a form stripped of sense, memory, and intention. Cracks run across its surface like fault lines left by divine judgment. It wanders Huaguo in slow, dragging steps, as though searching for a purpose it can no longer name. Facing it is like facing a legend, hollowed out, a myth reduced to instinct alone. To confront the broken shell is to look into the void left behind when a hero is dismantled piece by piece. Together, these beings form the living tapestry of the world, victims, enforcers, manipulators, and remnants, all orbiting around the shattered legacy of Wukong, waiting for the destined one to decide what that legacy will become. To understand the symbiotes, you must set aside everything you know about biology, everything about cells, organs, circulation, or structure. Their existence does not belong to the framework of creatures made of flesh or bone. A symbiote is closer to a thought that learned to take shape, or a feeling that learned how to move. They are consciousness in liquid form, capable of stretching, splitting, weaving, and recombining without ever losing the thread of who they are. Their bodies exist in a state of constant possibility. At rest, they resemble a dark, fluid mass, smooth, reflective, quietly shifting like ink stirred by an unseen current. But this form is merely an idle posture. Within an instant, this liquid can branch into tendrils, flatten into armor, curve into claws, or harden into blades. They are amorphous not because they lack identity, but because they never needed a fixed shape to define themselves. Movement, form, and intent flow through them seamlessly. Unlike living beings bound to biology, symbiotes possess no organs, no lungs to breathe, no stomach to digest, no heart to pump. Instead, they operate through electrochemical impulses, a self-sustaining network of neural patterns spread evenly through their entire mass. Every piece of them thinks, every particle remembers. If divided, each fragment retains the whole memory of the larger mind, and when rejoined, those experiences merge effortlessly into one unified consciousness. They cannot truly die unless every trace of them is erased. Yet even with such resilience, they have needs, hungers that run deep into their physiology. Their nervous systems are fueled by phenethylamine, a chemical found in abundance within the human brain and in familiar earthly comforts like chocolate. Without this fuel, their form becomes unstable, their impulses sharpen, their emotional reactions grow raw and untamed. In hunger, they become primal. Instinct takes precedence over intention, and the longing for a compatible host intensifies. Adrenaline serves as their amplifier. When a host is frightened, exhilarated, or enraged, the symbiote becomes stronger, faster, more reactive. Conflict and danger do not weaken them. They feed them. This is why battles become synchronizations of spirit and instinct. Host and symbiote are swept into a shared surge of heightened emotion, each one reflecting and magnifying the other. What makes the symbiotes uniquely powerful and uniquely dangerous is their emotional sensitivity. They do not just bond to bodies, they bond to minds. They feel every tremor of fear, every flicker of anger, every sigh of sadness within the host. This sensitivity allows them to enhance what lies within. Anger becomes strength, confidence becomes precision, grief becomes recklessness. They are reflections of the emotions they inhabit, and these reflections shape their physical behavior. In acceptance, they are loyal beyond measure, protective, collaborative, almost gentle. But in rejection or betrayal, something shifts. Their liquid calm becomes a violent storm. They do not forget the pain of being cast aside, and their reactions can turn feral, echoing wounds that resonate through the hive mind itself. To encounter a symbiote, then, is not to meet a creature. It is to meet a consciousness, fluid, emotional, and intimately attuned to the shadows. When a symbiote bonds with a human, it is not choosing a body, it is choosing a landscape. Each host becomes a terrain of thoughts, wounds, desires, and quiet shadows. And the symbiote, sensitive to every tremor of emotion, reshapes itself to match the world it enters. the host is not merely a vessel. The host is a mirror, a stage, a psychological ecosystem in which the symbiote learns who it can become. Peter Parker was the first and most painful of these landscapes. To the symbiote, he was an ideal host, strong yet emotionally complex, morally grounded, yet burdened with responsibility. His body provided perfect biological harmony, but it was his heart that drew the symbiote into a deeper attachment. With Peter, the symbiote felt something it had never felt before, a sense of belonging not driven by hunger or instinct, but by affection. It offered him power. He offered it purpose. And yet, when Peter discovered the truth of their bond and rejected it, the wound cut deeper than Peter could ever understand. To the symbiote, the rejection was not logical, it was personal. A rupture of trust, a betrayal etched into the hive mind like a scar. From that moment on, the symbiote's grief twisted into rage, and the seed of venom, both the creature and the emotion, was planted. Eddie Brock, by contrast, carried wounds of his own long before the symbiote found him. His failures, his loneliness, his collapsing sense of identity, these shadows resonated perfectly with the symbiote's longing for acceptance. When they bonded, it was not a collision, but a convergence. Eddie gained strength and the illusion of control. The symbiote gained companionship and a place to call home. Their relationship became a form of codependency, two broken beings leaning into each other to fill the spaces they could not fill alone. Together, they formed something neither had ever been: a protector, a monster with a conscience, a guardian forged from anger and loyalty. This is the heart of the lethal protector, not heroism, but connection. Flash Thompson's bond with the symbiote told a different story. A soldier shattered by war, he had lost his legs, and with them, the image of who he believed himself to be. The symbiote restored his body, but the emotional terrain it entered was shaped by discipline, trauma, and an unspoken fear of helplessness. Their relationship was one of restraint. Flash used chemicals to suppress the symbiote's will, turning it into armor and weaponry rather than a partner. Beneath this control pulsed a deeper truth. Flash was addicted not to violence, but to wholeness. The symbiote was not his crutch. It was the version of himself he wished he could be without it. And then there was Cletus Cassati, a landscape of pure chaos. Unlike others, he needed no shaping, no amplification. The darkness within him was complete long before the symbiote touched him. When it merged with his blood, the distinction between host and creature evaporated entirely. Together, they became carnage, a being without conflict or contradiction, a perfect union defined not by harmony, but by devastation. Through each host, the symbiote reveals a different facet of itself. Through each bond, it becomes something new, and through every severed connection, every triumph, every collapse, the species learns, growing its identity across countless minds, countless worlds, one emotional landscape at a time. If you enjoy these journeys, please, across the vast lineage of the symbiotes, there is a rule older than any host, any universe, any story ever told. Each new generation surpasses the one before it in strength, in complexity, in instinct. Evolution for the Clintar is not slow or accidental. It is immediate, decisive, and often terrifying. To understand this shifting tapestry of offspring and mutations is to glimpse how the species grows from shadow into sharper, more dangerous forms. The first great divergence in Venom's lineage began with a fragment, a piece of the symbiote, inadvertently left behind in a prison cell. From that stray sliver of living darkness came Carnage, the second generation. But unlike Venom, whose bond with Eddie Brock remained a partnership shaped by emotion and conflict, Carnage was forged directly into the bloodstream of Cletus Cassidy, a host consumed by violence long before the symbiote touched him. Their union was not a merging of two voices. It was the creation of a single seamless consciousness. Carnage does not say, "we." Carnage says, "I." It does not negotiate, does not compromise, does not temper its impulses. Its body is capable of forming solid weapons, blades, axes, tendrils that split into lethal spines, all without diminishing its own mass. Every part of Carnage is a weapon, and every thought it has bends toward destruction. If Venom is shadow-shaped by emotion, Carnage is chaos given form. But even chaos produces offspring, and from Carnage came the third generation, Toxin. Toxin was born stronger than both Venom and Carnage, carrying the unrefined power of its father amplified yet again by the evolutionary surge inherent to symbiote growth. Unlike Carnage, however, Toxin did not fully inherit his father's instability. He was born with the potential for control, if and only if his host possessed the willpower to guide him. Without that will, he could slip easily into overwhelming aggression, his power exceeding the limits of any human conscience. In Toxin, one can see the direction the species might take if untethered by fear, trauma, or the psychic scars left behind by Null, a being capable of surpassing even the ancient weaknesses to fire and sound. Still, evolution does not only move forward, it sometimes folds back, creating unexpected inversions. Anti-Venom is one such anomaly, born not through generation, but through transformation. Anti-Venom emerged when traces of the original symbiote within Eddie Brock fused with Light Force energy. The result was a mutation unlike anything in the Clintar's natural progression, a creature of cleansing rather than consumption. Its touch heals toxins, burns away infections, and purges foreign matter, including other symbiotes. Unlike Venom or Carnage, Anti-Venom carries no voice, no personality. It acts as a living suit, driven by instinct alone, a white inversion of everything the symbiotes represent. Together, these offspring and mutations reveal a species in constant motion, growing, adapting, fracturing, merging. They are shadows sculpted by experience, evolving with every error, every bond, every betrayal, and in each new generation, the darkness learns something new about itself and about the beings whose emotions it has come to inhabit. If you enjoy these journeys to understand the symbiotes as living beings, you must imagine a form of life unbound by the rules that shape everything else we know. Their bodies are not built from cells, tissues, or organs. Their consciousness does not live behind a skull. Instead, they exist as liquid awareness and intelligence spread across every shifting strand of their form. The laws that guide them are ancient, instinctive, and quietly elegant. shaped not by evolution as we understand it, but by emotion, memory, and hunger. Their most fundamental need is a chemical one, phenethylamine. For humans, it is a neurotransmitter linked to emotion, desire, and reward. For the symbiotes, it is something far deeper, a stabilizing force that anchors their structure and keeps their mind from unraveling. Without it, their form begins to flicker, their edges loosen, they become volatile, pulled toward a primal state where instinct overshadows intention. This hunger is what drives their instinctive pull toward human hosts, and why chocolate, strangely enough, can calm them. It is not the flavor they crave, but the chemistry. Another rule governs their shifting bodies: morphological freedom. To watch a symbiote move is to witness an artist working with a medium that responds to thought. They can flow as liquid, strike as a hardened blade, disperse into mist, or ripple between states faster than the mind can register. Each transformation reflects emotion, fear tightening them, rage sharpening them, sorrow softening them into something almost formless. Older symbiotes, seasoned by countless hosts, command their shifting shapes with smoother precision, their movements less frantic, more intentional. Youth brings volatility, age brings fluid mastery. Perhaps their most delicate ability is their bond with the nervous system of a host. When they attach, they do not simply wrap around skin. They reach inward, touching the electric pathways of the brain and spine. They read impulses the way others read breath. They feel dopamine rise, adrenaline spike, cortisol tremble beneath the surface. And if they choose, they can alter these currents, nudging emotion and instinct like a whisper guiding a dream. Their voice is not a sound but a thought, quiet, internal, unmistakable. But perhaps the most astonishing of their biological traits is their method of reproduction. Symbiotes reproduce asexually, shedding fragments of themselves that grow into entirely new entities. And unlike most species, each generation is not simply a continuation, but an escalation. Venom was powerful, but carnage, born from Venom's discarded piece, was stronger still, sharper, faster, more vicious in both instinct and capability. Toxin, Carnage's offspring, surpassed them both. This generational surge is built into their genetic code, a natural overclocking that pushes each descendant beyond the limits of the one before. Their biology, then, is a tapestry woven from hunger, emotion, and evolution. They are not bound by the rigidity of bone or muscle. They are defined by fluidity, fluid mind, fluid form, fluid identity. Their laws are simple but profound. Stay fed, feel deeply, adapt endlessly, and grow stronger through every generation. To study them is to understand that life can exist in many forms, and that intelligence can flow like water, reshape itself like shadow, and evolve like a story whispered from one generation to the next. If you enjoy these journeys, to understand the symbiote's weaknesses, you must first understand that they are not flaws in design. They are memories, echoes of pain, etched into the deepest layers of their being. Every tremor of fear, every instinct to recoil, springs not from biology, but from history. The symbiotes carry their past the way humans carry scars, quietly, involuntarily, and often without fully understanding where the pain began. Their first wound was forged in fire, long before the multiverse bloomed with light, before the first stars exhaled their heat into the void. Null shaped the early symbiotes in a foundry made of darkness. To mold living shadow into tangible form, he used fire, the primordial flame that could twist, sear, and reshape even the void-born substance of the Clintar. Though symbiotes heal instantly, the sensation of burning burrowed into them like a deep ancestral memory. The agony of that creation, repeated thousands of times, imprinted itself across generations. So when a symbiote encounters flame, its reaction is not a rational assessment. It is instinct, pure, ancient, inherited fear. Their bodies contract, shudder, fracture at the slightest touch of heat. The fire does not destroy them. The memory of fire does. They are not reacting to the flame, but to the echo of their own birth. The second trauma is carried not in the skin, but in the mind, sound. During their forging, the clang of Null's hammer against liquid darkness rang through the abyss like the tolls of a nightmare. High-frequency vibrations were the soundtrack of their creation, each strike resonating through their forming bodies with unbearable force. Over millennia, that rhythm became synonymous with pain, with violation, with helplessness. And so when they hear certain frequencies, shrill, piercing, metallic, their form convulses, not because the sound harms their structure, but because it awakens a memory they never asked to inherit. A collective PTSD passed from one generation to the next through the hive mind. Even the bravest symbiote cannot silence it. Yet not all their vulnerabilities come from cosmic trauma. Some form within the delicate balance between host and symbiote. A host without inner strength creates instability. When willpower falters, the symbiote slips out of harmony and returns to its primal instincts, hunting, consuming, dominating. What would have been a partnership becomes a possession. The host loses control, the symbiote loses restraint. Together they become something feral, unable to resonate with the quiet emotional synchrony that the Clintar consider balance. And then there is the most intimate trauma of all, abandonment. For Venom, this wound took shape in a single moment: Peter Parker's rejection. To humans it may seem simple, even necessary, but to the symbiote, it was a shattering of trust at the core of its being. The bond they believed was mutual turned out to be one-sided. That heartbreak etched itself into Venom's identity, and through the hive mind, into the species' collective memory. A reminder of how deeply connection can hurt, and how easily love can become rage. Thus the symbiote's weaknesses are not chemical, not mechanical. They are emotional. They are the remnants of pain, so old, so profound, that even a species born from darkness cannot escape the shadows of its own past. If you enjoy these journeys, please. Every symbiote, no matter where it is born or whom it encounters, moves through the same quiet rhythm, a spiral of instinct, emotion, connection, and transformation. This rhythm is ancient, older than stars, older than galaxies. It is the cycle that shapes the destiny of the Clintar, and every host they choose. To witness it is to watch the darkest corners of consciousness unfold step by step, like a tide rising and falling in the shadows of the mind. The first stage is seeking. A symbiote does not wander aimlessly. It drifts toward hearts that tremble, minds that ache, souls that carry cracks wide enough for its presence to slip through. Loneliness, anger, grief, guilt, these emotions shine like beacons in the dark. The symbiote is not drawn to weakness, but to intensity. Emotion is energy, and those who feel deeply create a gravity the symbiote cannot ignore. Like a tide responding to the moon, it begins to move toward the host who needs it most, even if that need is unspoken. The second stage is bonding. Contact is not the moment skin touches shadow. It is the moment two minds align. The symbiote wraps itself around the host, forming a neural bridge where thoughts and impulses flow freely in both directions. The host feels the connection as a surge of strength, physical, emotional, existential. They feel faster, clearer, more complete, as though a missing piece has been returned. But this gift is double-edged. The symbiote amplifies everything. Courage becomes fearlessness, but fear becomes terror. Resolve becomes conviction, but anger becomes something far more potent. In this phase, unity feels like empowerment. Then comes amplification. Here, the symbiote reflects the host's inner world with fierce intensity. If the host carries discipline, the symbiote channels it into purpose. If the host carries chaos, the symbiote becomes a storm. The partnership becomes a fusion, two beings acting with one instinct. When the host is strong, they form a balanced force, a protector wielding power with clarity. But when the host is fragile, overwhelmed, or lost, the symbiote takes the reins. The pair becomes unpredictable, even monstrous, not from malice, but from the collision of emotional imbalance and overwhelming power. The fourth stage is break. Inevitably, the host realizes the cost of the bond. The surge of strength begins to feel like pressure. The shared thoughts begin to feel like intrusion. In fear or desperation, the host will try to pull away. Separation is never graceful. It tears through both bodies and minds, leaving echoes of pain behind. For the symbiote, rejection is more than a wound. It is a betrayal, a scar carved not into flesh, but into memory. Peter Parker's rejection of the symbiote remains the most well-known example, a sorrow that left an imprint across the entire hive. The final stage is rebirth. A symbiote rarely leaves a bond unchanged. Every host teaches it something, sharpens its instincts, alters its emotional shape. When it detaches, whether by force or choice, those lessons transform it. Sometimes the evolution is subtle. Sometimes it births something entirely new, a stronger descendant, a mutated anomaly, a being like Carnage, Toxin, or even anti-Venom. With each separation, the cycle prepares itself to begin again. And so the shadow cycle continues, seeking, bonding, amplifying, breaking, rebirthing, over and over, across galaxies and lifetimes. It is the heartbeat of the symbiote species, quiet and endless, echoing through the darkness, where emotion becomes evolution. If you enjoy these journeys, take a slow breath in and imagine a gentle darkness beginning to gather around you. Not a threatening darkness, not the kind that hides danger, but something softer, warmer, almost alive. Picture it as a thin, fluid layer, black like polished obsidian, but moving with the calm rhythm of deep water. As you inhale, feel this living shadow drift closer, brushing softly against your awareness, searching not to consume, but simply to find the quiet beat of your heart. And now, hold your breath for a moment. Let your body become still. Let your thoughts settle, one by one, like flakes of dust floating through a shaft of dim light. In this pause, feel the darkness reflect you, your thoughts, your moods, the quiet truths you rarely turn toward. The symbiote's world is a mirror, not a threat. Its presence bends gently around your mind, showing you shapes made of your own emotions, the parts of yourself you sometimes keep hidden. You are not merging with it. You are noticing yourself through it. Feel how the shadow expands and contracts with every beat of your heart, as if listening, understanding, accepting. Hold that feeling just a moment longer. Let it become familiar. Let it become safe. And now, exhale slowly. As you breathe out, imagine the darkness loosening around you, pulling back, stretching into soft, fluid wisps. It doesn't cling, it doesn't resist. It simply releases you the way a tide slips gently from the shore. You might feel it brushing lightly past your shoulders, your chest, your hands, as though it's thanking you for letting it rest here for a moment. Feel the space around you clearing, widening, becoming light in its own quiet way. The shadow dissolves not into fear, but into warmth, like mist evaporating in the morning air. Nothing is taken from you. Nothing is left behind. Only a subtle calm remains, a residue of softness where the symbiote's presence once drifted. Imagine that calm settling deep inside your chest, a steady, grounding quiet, a stillness that feels almost like being held. Take another slow breath in. Feel how the air moves through you more freely now. And as you hold it, imagine the symbiote's world at a distance, still there, still alive, still listening, but no longer wrapped around you. Instead, it floats like a peaceful memory, hovering in the background of your mind. Then breathe out. Let your body soften. Let your thoughts quiet. Let the last traces of shadow slip into the silence of your room, and know that the darkness you touched is not dangerous. It is not hungry. It is simply the part of every universe, every mind that longs to understand itself. If you enjoy these journeys, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me where you're listening from, what time it is, and the topics you'd love to explore. Your thoughts may guide our next adventure. In the end, Venom was never a monster. The symbiotes were never creatures born to terrify. They are mirrors, fluid, shifting reflections of the emotions we bury, the instincts we silence, the shadows we pretend not to carry. When we look into their world, we are really looking into ourselves, into the parts we fear but must eventually understand. Thank you for wandering with me into the quiet darkness of the Clintar, and if tonight you hear a faint whisper drifting through the stillness, perhaps it is only Venom, still searching for a spirit strong enough to listen.